In these days, Drunvalo, you have talked about the heart, and that is the beginning of life, and the pattern of the flower of life. Can you tell us something about this?
Sure.
The heart and the geometries?
The geometries continue on, like I said, on every level, and including on conception. And so when a human being is born, they start out as a sphere, which is the ovum itself. It's a perfect sphere. And then through mitosis, the sphere divides into two. You don't see it at that moment, but then it goes to 2 to 4. And at that moment, it forms a perfect tetrahedron. When it goes from 4 to 8, it forms a tetrahedron facing down, one coming up, which is called a star tetrahedron, which is simultaneously a cube. And it proceeds through these geometrical relationships until it gets to 512 cells, at which point it is in the shape of an apple, which geometrically is called a toroidal field. It's one of the original fields that comes out of creation. And that toroidal field continues to grow, and it becomes the human heart. And there is a point that every human being went through where they were a heart and nothing else. They were just this big beating heart, and but with no arms and legs and head or no brain or anything. But it began to beat. This is why medical doctors and scientists for so long were trying to understand how the heart could begin to beat, because there was no intelligence, there was no brain. That went on for actually hundreds of years until Stanford, at a department called Heart Math, discovered that there was a brain inside of the heart. It's a little tiny brain. It's only 40,000 cells. But then, and so they found where the intelligence was. Then after a while, the human body emerges out of the heart, and then the heart is then wrapped into the body, and the brain is then formed later. This is why indigenous people all over the world and the ancient cultures and the Vedas, through the Vedas and everything else, speak about the central nature of the heart to human consciousness. It's really far more important than the brain. And there was a time, a long time ago, when all human beings lived, their spirit was centered inside of their heart, and they used their brain kind of like a remote viewing instrument so that they can see and everything else, but they were in their heart. And all of their decisions and everything that they felt and everything else was heart-based. It was a completely different way of experiencing and perceiving life. But 13,000 years ago, because of some things that happened, and there were a misuse of energy, it caused us to fall, the fall that the Bible speaks of. And that fall has been looked at in all kinds of ways of what happened, but on a real human physiological way of looking at things. All it was is that the spirit moved from the heart to the mind, and we've been living in our brain ever since. And that resulted in what we call ego, or a part of us that thinks only of itself and doesn't really care about other people. But that wasn't always true, and hopefully it won't continue forever in the future. That we believe that there's a time coming very soon when we will be able to shift back to our heart. Once we're back into our heart, all these external problems that we're having, wars and famine and on, everything you can imagine, all these problems, including the environmental problems, we will be able to find the solutions really easy, because it's all about cooperation, and it's about caring about each other and loving each other. And when the earth returns to their heart, that's what happens. And so it's simple to find the answers for these things.
So the big problem is that we move from our hearts to our minds? And from the mind we felt like we are separate from one from another.
Well, that's the experience, and we all know that experience. It feels like we're inside of our body, and that what is outside of our body is not us. That isn't the truth, that's an illusion. If you were back in your heart and you were really there, you would know that everything is interconnected, and that if you were to harm or do something to anything or anyone else, the truth is you're actually harming yourself. But that isn't apparent to the world because they are in their brain and cannot see, sense, or feel this intimate connection with all life everywhere.
So that's one of the reasons, or an important reason, that you are doing these workshops and the book Living in the Heart that you have written, to try to help the people return again into their hearts.
I'm attempting to get people to remember the ancient way of being, living in the heart, and I'm trying all kinds of different ways. This is the most important step. Once we are back into the heart, then we can begin to perceive that there are other possibilities in life that we don't even have any awareness of at all. Other ways of existing and being that are fantastic, and where life really becomes interesting and fun and enjoyable, and fear just dissipates and goes away. It's not even part of life anymore. And so, yeah, that's what I want to do. It's definitely true.